Hi, I'm Campbell from Alchemy Leader. Welcome back to our Conscious Evolution series. What if everything you believe about who you are is just a story? And a story that's keeping you small. Just consider that for a moment. Right now, you're watching this video through eyes that have been trained to see the world in a particular way. You're listening with ears that filter information through years of accumulated beliefs about what's possible and what isn't. You're experiencing this moment through an identity that you have carefully constructed over those years. And here's the thing about identity. It's not fixed. It's not solid. And if you're feeling called to walk the path of self-mastery, your current identification is probably the biggest thing standing in your way. I'm not talking about surface level changes here. I'm talking about the fundamental way you perceive reality itself. Because the truth is, we are unable to step into our full potential while clinging to limited versions of who we think we are. The path of conscious evolution demands something more radical. It asks us to question not just what we know, but the very nature of who we believe ourselves to be. And yes, this is uncomfortable territory. It should be. We're talking about dismantling the walls of the prison we've built for ourselves. Walls so familiar, we've mistaken them for safety. If you're ready to explore beyond these walls, if you're willing to challenge everything you think you know about yourself, then stay with me. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, you probably identify primarily with your body, your thoughts, and your personal history. This me that you think you are, it feels solid, it feels real and unchangeable. But what if I told you this identification is just the beginning? That it's like living in one room of a vast mansion, convinced that single room is the entire house. Let's get practical for a moment. Think about something that is challenging you right now. A problem you're trying to solve, a goal you're struggling to reach, a relationship that is just not harmonizing. Now notice how you're approaching this challenge from that single room in the mansion, from this me that feels so solid and so real. Notice how this perspective automatically limits the solutions available to you. Because here's a little understood truth about personal transformation. We are unable to solve the significant challenges of our lives from the same level of identification that created them. It's just not possible. As long as you're identified solely as this limited self, you'll only have access to the solutions available to that limited self. But what if you could step beyond that? What if you could access perspectives, wisdom, and capabilities that your current identification doesn't even know exist? This isn't theoretical. This isn't some abstract spiritual concept. This is practical evolution. When you begin to shift your identification, problems that seemed unsolvable suddenly reveal new possibilities. Resources you couldn't see before become available. Capabilities you didn't know you had start to emerge. And most importantly, you stop being the person who struggles with these challenges and become someone who confidently steps towards them. So what is expanded identification? It is a state where you recognize yourself as a part of something far larger than your individual personality. It's where you hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, seeing yourself not just as a separate individual, but as deeply connected with all of life. In this state, you naturally sense the relationship between immediate actions and their wider ripple effects. Understanding how personal transformation and societal evolution are intimately linked. Think of it as expanding your sense of self from a single drop to the entire ocean, while still honoring your unique role within the greater whole. Now, I can feel some of you getting uncomfortable. It's good. That discomfort, it's your current identification trying to maintain its existence and its boundaries, trying to keep you safe in your familiar limitations. Let me show you exactly what happens when identification starts to shift. And I'm not talking about small adjustments. I'm talking about fundamental transformations in how you experience life itself. Take leadership, for instance. When your identification is limited, leadership becomes about control, about having all the answers, about making others change while remaining safely unchanged yourself. You see yourself as separate from those you lead and focus on what they need to do differently, what they need to fix. But watch what happens when your identification starts to expand. You start to recognize that true leadership isn't about changing others. It's about having the courage to change yourself first. You begin to see that every challenge in your team is an invitation for your own transformation. Every resistance you encounter in others becomes a mirror, revealing where you might be holding on to control too tightly. From this expanded identification, leadership becomes an act of conscious evolution. Instead of demanding growth from others while standing still, you become the demonstration of the change you seek. Your team doesn't just hear your words, they witness your transformation. And as you shift your identification, you create a space that makes it safer for others to do the same. This transformation of perspective doesn't just apply to leadership. Consider how you handle conflict. From a limited identification, conflict is a threat. It's personal. It's me versus them. But as your identification expands, you begin to see conflict as energy-seeking harmonization. You become capable of holding multiple perspectives simultaneously, not just understanding them intellectually, actually experiencing them. Even your relationship with change itself transforms. When you're identified solely with your personal self, change is threatening because it challenges everything you think you are. But from an expanded identification, you recognize yourself as the space in which change occurs. Again, you are not just the wave, but the ocean itself. And here's what this looks like in practice. When faced with a major life challenge, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you naturally begin to ask, "What is trying to emerge through this situation? What is the universe trying to teach me?" Instead of reacting from your limited self, you respond from a place of expanded awareness. Even your experience of your physical body shift, rather than being trapped in the perspective of being a solid, separate form. You begin to experience yourself as a dynamic field of intelligence in constant communication with all of life. Your body becomes less of a boundary and more of an instrument through which you experience and interact with life. This isn't about adding more knowledge or acquiring new skills. It's about fundamentally shifting where you're operating from. It's about expanding what you see is possible by expanding who you think you are. Now, I sense there's a whole range of different experiences happening at the moment. I know this can sound enlightened. It might even sound exciting, but it also sounds terrifying. Because let's be honest, the biggest question in here is what happens to me in all of this? What happens to everything I've built my life around? These are valid feelings, and they bring us to the heart of why this journey can be so challenging. Let's talk about what comes up when we begin this journey of expanding our identification. Because if you're feeling that resistance right now, if you feel something in you is pulling back, that's not just normal, it's necessary to acknowledge. When we talk about expanding identification, part of you might be thinking, but wait, hang on a minute. I've spent years or lifetimes building this self. I've worked hard to become who I am. Are you saying that I need to go? And you're right. This self you've built has gotten you this far. It's helped you survive, achieve, and create value in the world. This isn't about destroying that self. It's about recognizing it as a character you can play rather than the totality of who you are. Then there's the practical resistance, which has been a great reflector on my journey. If I expand my identification, if I step beyond my current self-concept, will I still be able to function in this world? Will I still be able to meet my responsibilities, run my business, maintain my relationships? And here's what's fascinating. As your identification expands, you don't become less capable in the world. You become more capable. Because you're no longer operating from a place of constriction and fear. You're able to access resources and capabilities beyond your current self-concept. Perhaps the most striking paradox in this journey, and this is a continued part of my experience, is how we simultaneously are challenged with solitude, yet feel drawn towards it. There's this delicate dance between our need for connection and our need for space to grow. When expanding our identification, two distinct challenges often surface: the fear of isolation and the intuitive knowing that transformation requires periods of deep and often lengthy introspection. We worry that by changing, we'll somehow separate ourselves from others, that our family, friends, and community won't understand this new way of being. In my own journey, I'm constantly working with both sides of this coin. There are times when I need to focus inwards, reduce external connection, and to be alone with my transformation. The feeling that ahead lays this vast unknown territory, while behind me is everything that's familiar. Everyone I know seeing me in and around that less expanded identification. This space between can feel isolating, and it's easy to question whether we can maintain these deeper insights while staying connected to others. But here's some of the things I've discovered. This journey, yes, it can require periods of isolation. Yet even in those periods of isolation, I've never felt alone. This space allows me to feel fully engaged with life. It feels alive. It feels vibrant. And rather than feeling alone, It actually opens the door to deeper, more authentic connections. Yes, along this path, some relationships might shift or change. But when you're no longer trying to maintain a fixed identity, when you're able to meet others from a place of expanded awareness, you create space for genuine intimacy that just wasn't possible before. The solitude we sometimes need isn't about disconnection. It's about creating space to integrate our expanded awareness so we can return to our relationships with greater depth and authenticity. And here's something to really remember about all these aspects of resistance. They're not obstacles to the journey. They're an important part of it. Each aspect you face becomes a doorway to greater expansion. If you're willing to meet it with awareness, with curiosity, and with gratitude. You see, everyone is on this journey of expanded identification, whether they're conscious of it or not. Some are just beginning to feel that stirring of something more. Others are actively wrestling with their expanding awareness. And some are feeling that expansive and sometimes challenging sensation of stepping into new territory. So how do we make this practical and real? It begins with awareness. Notice when you're contracting into limited identification, in meetings, in relationships, and in moments of stress. Look for where you want to make it about the other person. Just noticing this starts to create space for something new to emerge. When you find yourself caught in a challenging situation, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, where is my identification right now? What broader view might be available? This isn't about escaping the situation. It's about accessing more resources to engage fully with it. And start with small experiments. When you're in conversation, practice holding both your perspective and the other person's perspective simultaneously. When facing a decision, consider it from multiple levels of identification. From your personal self, from the perspective of a larger system, and from the viewpoint of evolution itself. Take the time to notice what is absent in this space. It's judgment. Remember, we're the ones choosing the change. Everyone else has the right to step how they choose. It's important that we continue to choose acceptance over judgment. We accept everyone else for how they are, even if their choices are not aligned to what we would choose. Welcome to the universe of free will. Like any capacity, this grows with practice. Each time you catch yourself contracted is an opportunity. Each moment of resistance is an invitation to expand. As we wrap up this first exploration into identification, remember the journey of expansion isn't about reaching some final destination. This is not about transcending your humanity or abandoning your current life. It's about becoming more fully available to all of life, more capable of meeting each moment with all of who you are. This lovely world needs people willing to undertake this journey. Ones ready to challenge their limited identifications and step into broader perspectives. Ones who feel called to this path of conscious evolution. This week, I invite you to experiment. Notice where your identification feels contracted. Play with expanding it. Be curious about what becomes possible when you shift your perspective. And remember, you are not alone on this journey. You're part of this growing community of people committed to conscious evolution. Thank you for joining me today. There'll be much more to share on expanding identification in coming videos. Until next time, keep exploring, keep evolving, and most importantly, keep loving the journey. I'll see you soon.